All right, hello and welcome to the 259th episode of the Georgia Prep Sports Drive for the GHSA State Title. Today it is 1 week from kickoff of the 32nd annual Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic. So I'm going to talk about the matchups. I'll recap some of the takeaways from our luncheons. I've got some other high school news with some preseason all-state selections, some Gwinnett Super Six, and we'll also talk about some other football-related news. But I want to start with the news that dropped yesterday regarding Georgia Tech and their partnership with Hyundai. And they have announced a multi-decade partnership. I think that's huge. And so now it's going to be called Bobby Dodd Stadium at Hyundai Field. And I think that is going to be really exciting because when you look at what this partnership entails, I think of some other stadiums that have the major auto manufacturer or car brands as their sponsor. I think you see them try to incorporate that similar aesthetic that their vehicles have to the stadium. I mean, Mercedes-Benz Stadium is a perfect example. When you go in there and you think about the Mercedes brand, you think about the way the stadium looks, it kind of has that feel. So I think you're going to see more kind of lighting, a more futuristic update to Bobby Dodd with this partnership. I think it was a $55 million deal. And why has this deal happened? And I think it's because Hyundai is making major moves. So in Bryan County, that is kind of right down I-16, really close to Savannah, that is the new site, future location of the Hyundai Motor Group Meta Plant in America. It's a 3,000-acre complex where the Korean company and its partners are investing $5.5 billion to build electric vehicles along with batteries and powertrain components to power them. It's 25 miles outside of Savannah, and it looks like this news dropped in late May, so just a few months ago. The renderings are out. It's a huge plant. You can look up the site, and there's a nice article just about the plant. So it says, when you're driving along I-16 about 25 miles outside of town, you'll notice a significant stretch of the ubiquitous slash and lolly pine forest that has been cleared from the south side of the road to create an impressively large construction site. It's so massive, you'll see an array of earth-moving equipment, cranes, and the skeletal beginnings of a number of buildings for a good 60 seconds as you speed along the east-west corridor. So major moves right there. It makes sense. Tech's trying to do big things. Hyundai has invested heavily. They're saying that that plant alone is going to create, I think, 8,100 jobs. It'll be a big boost for the Savannah area as well. And them partnering up with Georgia Tech at one of the more historic stadiums in the country, I think that is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to see what the kind of upgrades will look like. I saw some other footage yesterday from Sanford Stadium in Athens, and it looks amazing. Just like once you leave the bleachers and you're in the concession area, it looks really nice with the facelift that they've given. Bobby Dodd's a really old stadium, but I think you're going to see them go like the cashless model, have shorter lines at the stadium, and I think it's just going to be an exciting partnership, so good for them. A lot of people were rolling their eyes about the name change. Sometimes people don't want to accept the new names, but I mean, it's still Bobby Dodd, and I'm just happy for them to get that big partnership. I think that's going to be exciting, and people going to the game, I think, will be pleasantly surprised. And just the whole EV, electric vehicle side of things, and just their new models they're trying to introduce to the industry. I think it's a big move for them. So that's exciting. So you can check that out. That story went mega viral yesterday. All right, so let's go to some of these preseason all-state teams. We'll just go over starting at 7A real quick. Thought this was a big deal. So the Georgia High School Football Daily released this. I'm not going to go over all of them, but the best player, that's, I think, the exciting part. So each classification, there was a best overall player named, and in 7A, that went to Juju Lewis, the sophomore quarterback out of Carrollton. And so just real quick, it says he's probably the best known sophomore in state history. I would 1,000% agree with that. Trevor Lawrence was a big name sophomore after he came up just short to Buford his freshman season. And I think what made Trevor Lawrence get on the map was it was just the numbers he put up. Yeah, he had the size and skills, but when you start as a freshman and have a big year like that, everyone looks at the career all-time leader mark, and he was on pace to set the record, and he obviously did. But that's exactly what Juju did last year. Not only did he put up massive numbers, he broke the state championship record for most yards in the game. He led them to a 14-1 season. Carrollton had exited out of the playoffs, I think, 4 or 5 straight years in the quarterfinals, so he was the difference maker to help get them over the hump. And I think naming him the best player in 7A, that shows how much respect he has earned. That's crazy, being a sophomore and getting that recognition. All right, so they also did what's the best position in all of 7A, and they've released the 7A, 6A, and 5A. We'll go over those, but they're saying in 7A the best position is tight end, and I think that's a good analysis by Chip and Todd. He's talking about Colquitt County's Landon Thomas. He is the #1 senior tight end in the country. You also got Elias Williams from Camden County. He's only going to be a junior. You have Caleb Odom at Carrollton. We know how good he is. You have Grayson's Kylan Fox. You got Ryan G. at Milton. And you got Hunter Teal at Walton, committed to Miami of Ohio. So that's something we'll watch all season long is the tight end battles. And just on that list right there, you're going to see 2 of them in the same game with Kylan Fox of Grayson and then Hunter Teal of Walton squaring off in the final game of the Corky Kell Classic. 2 of the best tight ends in the state and representing what has been deemed as the best overall position group in 7A. Who's the most highly recruited? That's Buford's Dylan Raiola. Obviously the consensus #1 player nationally. They also have a That's Interesting segment, and I guess that's a player where they're on the radar, but it's like, what can we really expect from them? They have a unique skill set. They gave that one to Dwight Phillips. He's on paper the fastest football player in the state this season. He's going to be on that Pebblebrook team. We talked to him at Media Day. He said he is aiming for a 2,000-yard, 20-touchdown season. That would be incredible. He's already committed to the University of Georgia. He's got a new head coach. He's got a big year ahead of him, and his father was also a tremendous athlete, Olympic gold medalist in the long jump, and a Tucker High School alum. So there you go. It says he returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown in Pebblebrook scrimmage against McEachern last week. Did you know that, Najee? Dwight Phillip returned the opening kickoff of this. That was the only points they scored. So he did his thing. Obviously, he probably didn't play the entire game, but that's quite a statement. First time out on the field. But, I mean, that's literally the speed he has. And he's a football player. He's not just a track athlete. He runs great routes. it definitely will be an interesting storyline. Let's see. Some of the snubs, I guess this is the players that were not included on the All-State preseason list. Let's see, they have Rayola because he's obviously brand new, so I think that was a decision the AJC and some other groups made because you got the Gwinnett Super Six. Yeah, this guy has quite the credentials coming in, but he hasn't yet played a game, so even in the Gwinnett Super Six, which I don't know, they might still put him on there, but he's not on this list, but he's obviously a guy that could end up being one of the best players in the state this season. And also Jeremy Heklinski, he's on the snubbed list. You got DeBron Gatling and Trajan Greco, the Georgia Tech commit. The most underrated player, they're saying, in 7A heading into the season, Bryce Hicks. That's interesting right there. As good as Juju was last season, which he was spectacular, Bryce Hicks had a phenomenal junior season. He did everything for them, whether it was the big interception in the Walton game in the semifinals, the 30 carry performance against Colquitt County, or just amazing plays in the passing game that always just help keep the offense moving. So Bryce Hicks poised for another big year. Obviously Juju has a lot of years left at Carrollton, but I've heard from some of the Trojans fans that they think Bryce is probably one of the best players to ever suit up at Carrollton. And they also have Kyer Spain on the underrated list. I've said it multiple times. He was the only player in 7A last year that ran for over 100 yards in every single game. He did it on a Parkview team that has the best receiver in the state and had a great passing attack last year and still was able to provide that balance. We'll get to see him a week from today against Kell. Then what else is news? Yeah, we don't need to go over that. They're talking about some of the bad news that came out of the Valdosta program. All right, so some other notable aspects of the All-State team. Daniel Calhoun of Walton made it, and then Ashton Woods of Walton. So 2 Walton guys. You have a lot of Buford players on there. Well, they ended up putting Dylan on the All-State, so I don't know how he'd be considered a snub. That's a little interesting. You got Aiden Banfield from Mill Creek's in there. No Cam Robinson, but Bryce Hicks and Kyer Spain, the running backs. I don't disagree with that. Dwight Phillips is the athlete. Brett Fitzgerald of Colquitt County is the place kicker, and he comes from a great lineage of kickers to come through the program. His brother was a phenomenal kicker at Colquitt County. He famously had that 60-yard free kick in the playoffs against Archer in Coach Probst's last year there. And then KJ Bolden is on there for defense, Jay Crawford, Christian Peterson from Westlake, and Tyshawn White from Buford. So looking at the list, I think Buford and Colquitt County are leading the way with the most. So let's go to 6A real quick. You got Prentice Air Nolan as the best player. Do not disagree with that at all. He's coming off a perfect season, led Hughes to the most points in state history and the first ever state title. He is going to Ohio State. And then the best position group, it was tight ends in 7A. It is quarterbacks in 6A. You got Air Nolan, you got A.J. Hill of Houston County, you got Baxter Wright, you got K.J. Smith, you got Reese Fountain, who's going to be playing for Rome against Cass, and then you got Edwards, Xavier Mahoney, among many, many others. The most highly recruited is Air Nolan in all of 6A, the number 33 overall player in the nation. And then on the snubbed list, they have wide receiver Joseph Stone, and he was the transfer from Grayson to Hughes, and he's committed to LSU. And then an interesting aspect of this, Woodward Academy actually had the most players on the preseason all-state list with 5, and it says that did not include receivers Ben Grice or Josiah Abdullah, who is heading into his junior season with 50 offers. We've seen him play. I think he definitely deserved a spot on there, but there are some talented receivers, and they only put 2 on the list. All right, in 5A, best players, Sammy Brown of Jefferson, the 5-star linebacker and running back who never comes off the field. He's been a 4-year starter, obviously going to Clemson. The best position in 5A is the offensive line, and I think that's another astute notice or decision by Todd and Chip right there, because you look at teams like Cass, you got that entire region, to be honest. Cartersville is a great offensive line. You got Hiram, Jefferson. So 5A, they're saying that is the offensive line classification. We'll see some great battles for sure. The most highly recruited is Sammy Brown. He's the number 25 prospect in the country. They said century, but I think they meant country. And he's the number 2 linebacker in the state behind former LaGrange star Trey Blackman from 2004. So I think what they're trying to say is he's the most highly rated linebacker prospect out of Georgia since 2004. Let's see. That's interesting. This says tight end Walter Matthews last season was the first non-punter from the 23-year-old Hiram High School to make first-team All-State, and 5 Hiram players are on the preseason team. So last year was the first time they ever had 1, and this year they have 5. And we've said it over and over again, that region is going to be insane. I think that Cass-Hiram game is really going to be something special. Those are 2 programs that I think have the ability to beat a team like Calhoun, beat a team like Cartersville. They've done it before. It's just going to be really hard to win that region. A great team's going to be missing out. You also got Dalton in that region. But even to escape that with just 1 region loss would be incredible. I think that would end up getting you the region title. These teams are going to be beating each other up. But certainly the Hiram and Cass programs have both been building up to this season. You can just see it with just how much talent they have returning. So let's go into some of these previews, and I'll actually start with Cass. So outside of the specific matchups with the players, who's going to be a quarterback, I think I tried to hit the nail on the head with this. So the Cass Colonels are on a mission to make the 2023 season the year that establishes the program as a preeminent force on the Georgia high school football landscape. They've had 2 winning seasons, I think, in the last 30 years. They have Steve Gates as their head coach, a McEachern alum. He also was at Kell, had a lot of success, and he talked about his 4-year vision for the program, and that's where they're at now. He's been really focusing on this group being the one that is going to finally get them into that relevant conversation, and their season opener against Rome is the perfect opportunity to pretty much get the biggest win I think their school has had in definitely my lifetime. I think they had 1 year where they made it to the quarterfinals back in like the 70s or something, but no, I think it was 1982. But other than that, I mean, if they beat Rome to kick this thing off, that would be absolutely huge. Last year they lost a heartbreaker to Kennesaw Mountain, and Kennesaw Mountain was a top 10 team at the time. So Rome will be a tough test, but these guys have definitely been preparing for it, and they're going to need to use that game to get prepared for that incredible region we talked about. Last year, they upset Jefferson as the number 4 seed in the first round of the playoffs, and then were defeated in the Sweet 16. They got Kevin Henderson. He had 13.5 tackles for loss. They got Caden Ellis, a big defensive lineman, heading into his junior season. So they've got a great senior class, but also those young guys. In terms of Rome, let's see real quick. Their only 2 losses last season were to Carrollton and Hughes. They were 12-2, and those are the only 2. So they lost to Carrollton in a close one early in the season, and then Hughes in the semifinals. Can't really fault them for that, and they're just coming back with a lot of talent. They've been outstanding, and I think the thing that stands out about them and the contrast, Cass is going to have a really tough time in their region just with all the talent, whereas Rome last year absolutely cakewalked the competition. They outscored them 312-29. That is a 48-point average margin of victory. No other region champion last year had a wider margin. That's bigger than Hughes. That's bigger than any of them. They were just head and shoulders above the competition. So if they're going to make that deep run and try to get to the finals or try to get past a team like Hughes or Roswell, they're going to have to come out sharp and use big matchups like this to prepare them. A big guy to watch for Rome will be Justin Terrell, 6'2", 280-pound, 3-star, committed to NC State. That is going to have to go up against that incredible Cass offensive line. And then you got Javian Winston in the secondary. He had a big junior season. All right, some other key matchups. We'll talk about the Walton Grayson one. I was impressed with who Grayson was bringing out. I was impressed with Coach Bryant, probably the youngest head coach in the state this year, making his debut against Walton will be a big test. They're going to have to be prepared for any scenario. Walton has the tempo. They've got a ton of experience. They got a quarterback that can really make you pay if you aren't communicating and lining up. So I think it will be key for them to limit the big plays. Can't get any penalties. You can't give Walton any extra help in regards of their explosive offense. But I think the key will be, can Grayson's offense establish a rhythm against that Walton defense? Because if Walton's defense is giving that offense short fields, the Raiders are going to be able to jump out to a quick start, and I think that will be an incredible matchup for sure. But that Grayson defense has a lot to prove. It'll be a great test, and I know they're going to bring that physicality. Mount Pisgah and Fellowship Christian. Last year they played. It was a 21-18 Mount Pisgah victory. That was the first time the Patriots ever beat Fellowship Christian. And then I think the big key in that game was C.J. Givers only had 4 carries, and that's the Fellowship Christian running back. He's heading into his sophomore season after getting a ton of experience later on and help leading them into the semifinals. I think he's coming out, and he's going to have a big time coming out party to start his sophomore season. Let's look at these other ones. Let me pull this up real quick. Okay. Brookwood and McEachern. Najee wrote this one, and you know what? These are the 2 teams that have been in every single Corky Kell, but I think this is actually going to be a really intriguing matchup because you got the new coaching staff at McEachern, and then you got a Brookwood team that is going to look really different this season. Last year they had Dylan Lonergan at quarterback. He was actually their leading rusher, too, for much of the season. And this year I think they're going to be a physical running offense. McEachern has a lot of size. We've seen how just explosive their skill players are. They looked great against Pebblebrook. As we said, they only allowed that kickoff return, but I think Brookwood coming out and trying to establish the run and have a balanced offense this year, I think that'll be exciting. And footage from their practice has been high energy. It looks like they are excited to come out and get a victory against a great McEachern team. Creekside and Kennesaw Mountain. Kennesaw Mountain, I think they were 7-3 last season and missed out on the playoffs, so it was a really tough year for them. They had some uncharacteristic losses. They're going to be in a brutal region with Walton, North Cobb, I think Cherokee, and Wheeler. So it's going to be a tough region once again. They started out really great last year in non-region, but then things kind of fell apart. So they're going to have a new quarterback, and playing Creekside in the opener will be a really tough challenge. We know how outstanding Coach Dixon's group is. They have a lot of pride in their secondary. They're aggressive on defense, and then offensively, what's really impressive about them is, like, some years they're just really great at passing the ball. Others, if they have more talent in the run game, they'll hurt you with that. And so I just expect their offense to come out and do what they do. And they have a bitter taste after last year dropping the opener to Rome. You got Archer and North Forsyth. That will be an interesting one as well, because both those teams lost in the Corky Kell last year. North Forsyth, the heartbreaker to North Atlanta, and then Archer just with a really young team. And they have been trying to get back to the fundamentals, and under Coach Williams, his second year, and then North Forsyth, they're going to be replacing a lot of guys for sure. But then I guess, yeah, they replace some of their skill players, but they will have Carson McBrayer and then a lot of their defense returning, including Brody Hancock. The Parkview at Kell one, gotta say, like, I don't know what to expect in this one. I was really positive about Kell just after their season last year, and then I went to the Walton scrimmage, and I think 7 guys didn't dress out. Bryce Clavin wasn't there. Hopefully he'll be back. He's been basically taking the baseball scene by storm, just absolutely killing it all summer long. He made the All-American team. He's going to be competing in that. They're projecting him as a first-round draft pick next year. So is he going to be able to come in after playing baseball and hit the ground running? Obviously, he's one of the better quarterbacks and athletes in the state, so I don't doubt that. It's just against Walton, that game was 35-0 early in the second quarter, and just without Bryce, I mean, their offense didn't have anything going, and then defensively, they really struggled stopping Walton in every phase. And you got a team like Parkview with a huge offensive line, probably some of the best running backs, especially with Kyer Spain, but really just a lot of guys that can carry the football. That is going to be a really tough matchup. I haven't seen Kell at full strength, but I think they'll be interesting 1 week from today. And then obviously Mike Matthews, a guy that it's really tough to guard, and then once he catches the football, he is off to the races, the best receiver in the state. Johns Creek and, hold up, did I say North Forsyth? Johns Creek's playing North Atlanta, right? Yeah, this headline's wrong. All right. So, yeah, Johns Creek at North Atlanta. That is going to be the first matchup at Kell High School a week from today. Johns Creek's got their third head coach in 3 years. They're coming off a tough season where I think they had just 2 returning starters. So now they're going to have a lot more experience back, a new coaching staff, and then North Atlanta is coming off their best season ever. And then they got the big playoff win last year. Mill Creek and North Gwinnett. What will Mill Creek look like? They replaced a lot of guys like Caleb Downs, Hayden Clark at quarterback, but I think they're just so good at finding the best playmaker at each position. They're going to be well prepared. They've done really well in the Corky Kell year after year. They're comfortable playing in a venue like Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and they've got, I think, a favorable matchup with a good North Gwinnett team. But I think they match up well. I mean, they'll be solid on the offensive line, and obviously in the backfield with Cam Robinson, who, as good as he was last year, he really didn't become their primary back until halfway through the season. They also got Trajan Greco, Aiden Banfield, all-state offensive linemen, and a great secondary. Norcross versus Marietta, the opener on Saturday. The key in that one, will any of the coaches in that game challenge a play? We'll have instant replay, and that will be a historic moment just from the booth if one of them challenges a play or if something's reviewable, which I think it will. It's pretty uncommon for a play in a football game these days to not require a second look, so that's the big key in that one, because history will almost certainly be made. Both teams, you had Norcross setting the school record for most points last year, but then they replaced a lot of guys, and then Marietta struggled early in the season last year, but later on was able to make some noise in the playoffs. You got West Forsyth and Cherokee Bluff. Cherokee Bluff is coming off, they had back-to-back 10-win seasons and then moved up to 4A, were really young last year, and I think that was wasn't a setback year, but they were riding really high as a new school that was experiencing a lot of success. Kind of got a little humbled last year with some tough losses, but I think they will certainly be more focused this year, and West Forsyth will be a really tough matchup, and they'll be playing at home. But that's it right there. We'll have these all posted on Score ATL. We got some other news that has gone up. Najee's recruiting intel. I did a story yesterday on Mountain View's Justin Green getting named to the Gwinnett County Super Six. He's the first Mountain View player in school history to ever earn a spot on the Super Six. And I think it's an interesting read because it talks just about how much size he's been able to put on and how he's done it. He's gone from a 200-pounder after his freshman season. Now he is a solid 265. He's committed to Georgia, and we saw him in person at Media Day, and he is an absolute beast. Last year he was a primary run stopper. He is scheme versatile. I think that is a credit to him being a state championship caliber wrestler and a guy that has built size gradually, so he has the speed, and I think he'll be a big-time player this year, so you can read that. Other than that, the only news I have before we wrap this up is we'll have the preview up, but on Friday, I'm going to be joined by Jeff Saturday, who is going into the second class of the Georgia High School Football Hall of Fame. Jeff Saturday, a Hall of Fame player for the Colts, a Super Bowl champion, and obviously was making a lot of headlines last year when he filled in as the interim head coach for the Indianapolis Colts. He's a guy that has great insight to the game. He used to coach at Hebron Christian as well. He coached his son there, so he's been all over the place, and he's really been a guy that's giving back to the game of football, which is one of the many things I want to talk to him about. But I think that's what I'm seeing a lot of now, though. It's like, let's think about the NFL back in the 70s, 80s, or whatever. These guys would have their careers, and then once they were done, sometimes you didn't see them or hear from them again. I think today you're seeing even guys that don't make it to the NFL a lot of football players are going into coaching afterwards. They're getting involved in NIL, public speaking, youth activities, personal training. We're seeing more and more former football players giving back to the game. I think that's one of the things that has just helped it improve and has helped the bar get raised year in and year out. So cannot wait for that conversation. And then Najee will be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock with Keeping It Real with Najee Wilkins. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you then.